Welcome again to the show. I'm so happy that you are back with us. And I just love talking to you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back also.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, it was so fun talking to you before. And I had moms emailing me about how helpful it was. And so I was like, okay, we're having you back.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And I just want to start out, I guess you've had so many things going on recently with transitions and parenting, and where are you at? Because last time we met, your daughter was getting married, she was moving.
Yeah.
There's something else now I'm forgetting.
She was about to graduate college. Our first, our oldest daughter, getting ready to graduate college, then getting married, and then that happened this summer in May. And now we are a few weeks away from her and her new husband leaving and going to England to live for a year. So
wow.
we've had a great summer, but I feel that we're trying to spend as much time together as we can, and we kind of all feel just this, like, it's going to be a big thing to say goodbye to them for a year. And then my youngest gets her driver's license tomorrow. It's her 16th birthday. And our middle daughter stayed at school for the whole summer in Michigan. So she didn't come home. I mean, she's been home a few times, but she's living away for the whole summer. She got a car, she's working full time. So it's just been a lot of transitions and like big milestones, I feel like, and just letting go and getting used to a different season, a new season of parenting. Young adults and one teenager left at home.
Yeah, it is lots of shifting and lots of letting go, like you said. How are you doing with letting go? I mean, the letting go of control, when I think of your daughter turning 16 and driving,
Yeah.
Has it gotten easier every time?
No. No.
It did not get easier for me.
No, it's like, for me, it's one of the worst feelings. I mean, it's really hard. And she's a very good driver. I mean, it's not a reflection on her. It's just that sense of control. And one of the things I remember we talked about last time was creating a culture in our families where we get help. And if you want to go see a therapist and get some help, you can. So my husband and I actually found a new therapist, and we are going to counseling after, like, many years ago that we went to marital counseling. And we kind of went in with a couple things in our marriage that we wanted to talk about after our daughter got married. And then it's kind of become a place where we can go and each of us can talk about different things. And I remember the first week that the therapist said to me, like, she kind of wanted to spend some time unpacking something with me personally. And I felt kind of bad, like, well, should I come back and see you privately? Like, I don't want Bernie just sitting here, like, being bored because I'm talking all about myself. And she just said, I think that, you've kind of carried this alone for a long time, and it might be nice to not have to do it alone. So that's kind of been her approach.
Oh, wow.
And it's been really beautiful. And one of the things that we unpacked one week was just my difficulty in letting go. And it's one thing to relate to your kids in the season they're in, but she used the word over identification. So me kind of thinking I know exactly what they're going through, or just kind of replacing that sense of control that maybe I felt I had with worry, constant worry. And sometimes it makes me feel like I'm a good mom because I'm so worried and I'm so concerned. I mean, and how that's taking energy away from me being able to enjoy this new season, which really, I have more time, I have more freedom. My husband and I have more time together, but I was really just feeling the burden of just worrying all the time because they're gone. They're like, there's more distance. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I so relate to you, that letting go of control. And at the same time, the worrying, it feels like at least you're doing something.
Yes.
Because you can't control it. But if I'm worrying, then I'm doing something. I don't know. It's kind of
It can
talked
feel
about
that way,
I know,
but
it's
you're really not
true.
doing anything. You're not, I can't do anything by worrying. It's just draining me, exhausting me, um, making me even sometimes feel a little depressed, I feel like,
Oh, yeah.
So I think I feel like over time, my emotional boundaries have kind of become more unhealthy. So that's what I'm trying to focus on now is just like, what is in my control? This situation, it's not in my control. It's not my life. It's not my decision. It's not, and the other side of that is really just when we see our kids struggling and the things I'm worrying about is she really reminded me that it's when we struggle is when we grow. And I'm like, I know that. I'm thinking, I wrote about that in my book. I know that, but it's just really like, I don't know. I feel like I would just feel so good if I knew that all of my kids were happy and everything was great. And I could just relax and that's not, um, I think the struggle is important. There's value in it. So then
Yeah.
I would see in my role as more of a support. How can I come alongside and support so they don't feel like they're alone, but they have to work through the struggle. So
Oh gosh, you said so many good things. Well, first of all, I love that you're going to counseling with Bernie because you're in such a new phase with him, even though your daughter's 16 and she's still at home.
yeah,
It's I think that it's so important to do this work on our marriages as our kids are leaving because that's when couples tend to get divorced.
yeah,
The kids leave and then you don't have as much in common maybe, or it's been all about the kids, or
yeah.
lots of resentment
Hmm.
has built up over the years and it hasn't been flushed out.
Yeah, that's so
So
true.
that, yeah, you're being so intentional, the two of you.
Just I see this thing that's concerning me, but what if it gets worse? What if they
Yeah,
start
the
to
what ifs.
go down the path a little bit more the wrong direction, in my opinion? Or what if they, just the what ifs, and then yeah.
Yeah, who's relating, moms that's listening? the what if, the what if, and that I call it the fortune telling. I mean, I didn't make that up.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
what psychologists call cognitive distortion.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah, we play it out in the future and then we catastrophize.
Yeah.
The what if, the what if.
Oh, yep.
But I so relate because I struggled as a kid with anxiety. I had panic attacks.
Yeah.
I had some trauma early on, losing my
Mhm.
dad. And I can see, and I am in counseling, I'm in a group, I do one-on-one, but I've been thinking lately, doing some maybe more work on like trauma work even,
Yep.
because it seems like it's more stirred up lately. And
Oh,
for
yeah.
me, a little bit. And I don't know what that is. If it's the ages of my kids, my
Hmm.
daughter's in college now. She's going to get her own car. She lives in Fort Worth, Dallas, Fort Worth. She goes to TCU. And I'm thinking it's so hard to drive down there. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's hard. So it's like, I'm always like worried about or not always, but what I tend to do is worry more about physical safety.
Hmm.
That something bad's going to happen
Oh, me too.
with physical
Yeah.
safety. Um, Not that I don't worry about the other stuff too,
Yeah.
but I'm relating with the anxiety piece. Did you or do you struggle with anxiety yourself?
Well, yeah. And I think I relate to what you just said. I grew up with a lot of anxiety. I had some trauma that I felt like I worked through in my early 40s. And now I'm
Mhm.
almost 50. So I'm really just in my late 40s. But 8 years ago, I felt like I kind of worked through a piece of some trauma that happened to me when I was 5 or 6 years old. But it just has gotten stirred up again. And I think that sometimes that happens, like you said, maybe the ages of our kids trigger certain things, but also I just don't think we can always completely resolve
Yeah.
trauma all at
Yes.
once. It's like
Yes.
we can bite
Yes.
it off in pieces, we can work through stuff, but then I just look at it like anytime something like that gets stirred up, it must mean that there's still healing that I need. And that's just how I see it. So that's part of what we've done in counseling. And she kind of said, I think I want to do some trauma work. And that's when I said, well, I don't, Bernie's going to be bored. You're going to be talking just to me. But it really was, it just was amazing to have him just be a part of that and have him understand me better. But the anxiety is something I've always had, and it works itself out in all different ways, and it's always, it drains me so much, whether I worry about physical safety, like what you just said. I worried about what's happening right now and where is this going to lead them down the road.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see them go through the same things that we've struggled with. So there's a big part of me now. I have a daughter who's married, and my husband and I have gone through a lot in our marriage, and I don't want to see them go through the same kinds of things. And yet what she said to me was, the counselor, that again, but when we struggle, that's when we grow. And I'm like, I do believe that. It's just hard to kind of make space for that with our kids and be able to say, yeah, I think we need to just trust that you're going to keep growing as you struggle through this. And I'm here. I'm here for whatever you need, whatever that looks like. We're here to support you, instead of trying to fix it so that they don't have to go through it.
Exactly. Well, and I was even
Yeah.
thinking, well, of course, getting married, if you're going to have an intimate marriage, I used to think, maybe you're like me, I got married and I'm like, we never fight. We're so happy. We don't have any disagreements. And, now I kind of laugh at that because I just wasn't consciously aware that there were a lot of things that I just hated conflict, that I was a conflict avoider. But if you had have heard my prayers, they were all about fixing my husband,
Of course.
And I think, no, true intimacy and loving somebody, of course you're going to have conflict. Of course you're going to have to grow. Of course you're going to have, struggles and challenges. And it's like that iron sharpening iron. But I just think, like you said, we know it, but getting it from our head to our heart.
Yeah.
And being able to just live, I think of that, living lighter and freer and not carrying around these burdens that we're not meant to carry.
Yep.
And I guess there's, it's that continually transferring it, like, okay, I'm worrying. I have to literally imagine myself holding on to it and then giving it over to God.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm scared about this. I'm giving it over to you, and physically imagining that, because it's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
And of course, like you said, then we can have some unresolved things that are peeking their heads up that we need to work through too.
Yes. Yep. There's always stuff that we, and I'm like, well, I'm struggling and I'm growing, but I'm okay. And so I think it's really a great thing for our kids to be able to see us continue to do that all through our lives, to just keep, what can we talk about? What do we need to maybe address, and what kinds of things can we work through and keep growing through? So, and recognizing that our kids, in many ways, they're more equipped than what I give them credit for. And they really are. I don't want to say, it's kind of a cliche, like you're stronger than you think, but in a way it's true. It's like they're really, they surprise me sometimes, with how they can move through things and just hang in there and figure out different, solutions or something. And they don't need me to be telling them what to do all the time at this stage as teenagers and young adults.
Yes. Well, and I'm so glad that you said that, because what we end up, we don't mean to, but we send that message to our kids that we really don't believe they're capable.
Yeah.
And even the anxiety, I found when I was feeling anxious, I ended up it was like I transferred that anxiety to my kids.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, I'm anxious, but now maybe I better really be anxious because mom's really anxious around this. And we end up, then it makes it so much bigger. Yeah. And, getting in there and trying to fix something, it can be like, I don't think that you're strong enough to handle this. And I was thinking, to your point, when we were talking before we went, I hit record, just how keeping the relationship with our kids open is the most important thing. Focusing on that. And if we're focusing on the control, we're not really in the moment.
Right.
Everything that could go wrong or what can happen.
Yep.
You talked about your daughter coming home after a breakup with a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And you were able to do it differently.
Well, yeah, this was talking about keeping the relationship first, even with teenagers. And, you know, you set limits, you have rules. In our family, we have a curfew. So this is Kate, when she was a senior in high school, and she had a boyfriend. And this was like the third night. And they were up late talking. They were, you know, she had missed curfew. This was the third night in a row. And she would text and say, like, we're talking about something. I really can't come home. I need like more time. But this was the third night. So I was frustrated. I was thinking, okay, this is the third. I'm tired. I don't go to bed till they get home. I just can't sleep. It's part of that anxiety thing. So I was like, you need to come home now, you know? And she texted me and said, I think we're breaking up. And I was like, okay, well, I said, are you okay? You know, do you need me to come get you? He was going to drive her home. And so she came home maybe like an hour late. And I was sitting there and I was going back and forth between being worried about her and feeling such compassion for her, because I remembered what breakups felt like, you know, and how difficult that could be, but still being frustrated because the time was ticking away and I was tired and I just wanted her home. And then I just had this thought, like, I only get one chance to do this moment right now. So when she comes in the door, I just want to be ready to just welcome her and let her be where she's at. And she came in and I didn't scold her and say, man, you know, it's like it's the third night in a row or whatever. I just didn't say anything. And she just came right to me and I took her in my arms and she cried. And it's like her and I had been like butting heads. I mean, she was a senior in high school. We had a ton of conflict, but in that moment, I remember thinking like she needed her mom. And I was grateful that in that instance, I was able to be there and to keep the relationship first and to just go after her heart. And, you know, it wasn't about the curfew, you know, it was about, and that's happened in other situations where, you know, even if there is disobedience or a rule is broken or my kid lied about something or whatever, you know, that has to be dealt with. But I want to get to what's underneath that. You know, why did you feel like you had to lie to me? You know, why can we talk about that? And to just keep, I think, going after their heart and trying to get to what is underneath. But it's so hard. It's so hard for me to not just react out of frustration, you know?
Yeah, I think that it is hard, and that's just like a wonderful, I don't know, sticker to put up on our computer, little mantra to say, you know, yes, that has to be dealt with, but how can I approach this where I am going to make the relationship be in first place? Like, how am I going to, because if we can learn how to do that and cultivate that close relationship, our kids will be more open to hearing what we have to say. They'll feel more safe. And like you talk about in the book, also like heard, you know, that we're seeking to understand where they're at in that moment. And I love you no matter what, you know. And that, I feel like that trickles into everything. Like if we can put the relationship first and remind ourselves how important that is, a lot of the other issues that we have, I feel like, work themselves out. But if we're focused on like, that bad behavior and punishing them and being punitive, but not really wanting to see their heart, that's when they're going to rebel. They don't want to talk to us. There's that disconnection. Have you found that to be true in your own relationship with your girls?
Oh, definitely. And some things are harder than others for me to get to what's going on in your heart. Like with my oldest daughter, again, like that last year of high school was just combative between the two of us. And it still has taken me, I still don't always get it, but when she gets really stressed, it just comes out as like rudeness, and I just couldn't deal with that. She would just be really rude, and all I could think is, this is not acceptable for you to talk to
Yeah.
me this way. And that's true, but I wish there were a lot of moments that I wish I would have been able to just say, can we just take a time out? Are you feeling really stressed? Like, is there something that you're really anxious about? Because I think if I could have done that, I think we could have gotten to what was below that. The rudeness, up here was underneath. She holds all the stress inside, and that's what comes out. And I had talked before about, for me, it's anger. My anger would come out, and underneath it was fear. So I think, it happened so many times that after the fact, I'd realize, oh my gosh, she's so stressed about what college she's going to go to and the ACT test. And she's so stressed about this class at school, and she has a friendship situation going on or whatever. And I didn't know that, because all I was reacting to was the attitude or the rude behavior, and not digging a little deeper to try to figure out what was going on. And how much would I appreciate that if my best friend or my husband were to say, like, are you okay? Like, are you upset about something? Are you worried about something? You seem kind of short with me, but there might be a reason why. Like, I would appreciate that.
That feels so different
Yeah.
than somebody just being on the attack,
Yeah.
versus, are you doing okay? Like, what's going on with you?
Yeah. I care about you,
Yeah,
Are
I
you okay?
care about you,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, you're so disrespectful. How dare
Yeah.
you talk to me like that? But it's hard to be, not be reactive in those moments.
Yes.
Do you feel like you've become more skilled at not reacting?
I do. I think it's gotten better. It also may be because my kids are leaving home, so I don't have all three of them at home anymore. It's kind of like that. So many people say, like, my parents are such great, they're wonderful grandparents, so much different than what it was like when I was growing up in their own home. I could see that happening, because I think as you get older, I think part of it may just be that they're out of the house and they've moved on. But I do think that I've learned, and I think with my youngest, and it's also different to just have one kid at home. I feel like I'm experiencing things much more like present in the moment with her than what I did when the others were at home, because I had three kids at home, and I just feel like my attention was divided. But I do think that I'm learning and becoming more skilled the more that I practice, and I'm just kind of trying to approach conversations differently. I'm not at all saying we should just be permissive and just let our kids like walk all over us and be rude, because we see a lot of that too, and that has to be dealt with. But I just think you can do that, you can deal with that while at the same time connecting with their hearts, and I think our kids will get it if they see that we really truly care about what they're struggling with, and we want to connect with their hearts. They're going to understand that maybe they get their phone taken away for a couple days because of what they did, or maybe they got grounded because they lied and said they were somewhere when they were really somewhere else. I think they can understand there's consequences and accept it a little easier if they see that we are also, trying to connect with their heart.
Yeah, that we're for them, like you had said,
them.
and that we care.
Yeah.
And I always say to the moms, they really do want boundaries. And they're two separate things. It's like they need to be heard. We need to be curious. We need to seek to understand. And they also need those limits or boundaries or consequences.
Yes.
But they need both.
Yeah.
I think that Henry Cloud and John Townsend say it well. They say they need grace and they need truth. Like the truth part is the boundaries, the limits.
Yes.
But then they need that grace and that understanding.
Yeah.
And I liked that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually, I referenced John Townsend in his book, Boundaries with Teens, in the teenage chapter on my book. And I talk about this idea, like, just wait until they become teenagers, because it's something that people always say. And it just like, it makes parents so afraid for the teenage years to constantly hear that. But I have a couple lists in that chapter, and one of them is from the book Boundaries with Teens, and it's Dr. John Townsend just talking about the challenges of raising teens and some of the some of the characteristics that can be common. So when I included this list, some things are like they can have a disrespectful attitude, towards parents, family, and others. They can challenge requests or rules. They can be self-absorbed. They can be lazy and careless about responsibilities. They can be emotionally withdrawn and moody and all these things. And when I wrote this, I thought, okay, this is some parents who read this, if their kids are younger, they're going to think, oh, my kid will never do this. Or they're going to think, this sounds terrible. Like I am dreading the teenage years. But some parents who read this, I think, if they're in those years, are going to be so relieved to know that, like, okay, it's not that my kid is horrible. It's that this is common. This is something that is really common among teenagers, just the stage that they're in. But then the other list I included in this chapter is from our former youth pastor and friend. His name is Scott. And all three of our girls had the privilege of being under him in his youth ministry. And he's been working with teenagers for decades. And so I emailed him. He moved to California, but I just said, can you tell me a couple things that you love about working with teens? And I thought he'd give me 2 or 3, and he sent me an entire list. But some of the things I love, what he said, is that they have passion, that they ask probing questions. And if they know you're taking them seriously, they'll share their thoughts and opinions and maybe even ask you for yours. This is one of my favorites. He said they have half a century or more of life in front of them. So anything they discover as a teenager literally has decades to grow and bear fruit. And I really love that. And I think that includes what we are teaching them. They're like, it's like the seeds that have been planted within them. They have decades for all of that to grow. And they're, so what can seem sometimes like they're just choosing a different path, and they're kind of pushing away from maybe some of the things we've taught them, or values we have, or beliefs we have. It's not the end of the story. They're pushing away, but I think that over time those seeds will grow. And, so that gives me some comfort,
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I love that too. And it's funny because I just did, for the membership, I just did a workshop on boundaries. And then the one I did last week was conflict, and talking about, I use a lot from that book, Boundaries with Teens. It's such a good book.
Yeah.
But it helped me because when my oldest, who's now 31, was a tween, I didn't know those things were normal.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I thought I was the one in the camp that my kid's not going to be disrespectful. They're not going to be moody. I don't know what I was thinking. But now I understand it serves a purpose. Like they're arguing because they're trying to figure out who they are apart from us.
Yep.
That they're wired to become more independent. So the reason that they're this way, that they act that way, and they push away, and they want to become more independent, and they're seeking out their peer group, is they're needing to learn how to be in the world for when they do leave the nest.
Yeah.
And yet to expect them to know how to do that responsibly at this age is expecting an awful lot.
Yeah.
Because they've never learned that. Right. How to express their anger responsibly. So
yeah.
How we can plant seeds is if we can learn how to be more responsible with our anger and our emotions, and to give them the space to talk about how they're feeling. It's very counterintuitive, but that's how they're going to learn how to be more responsible, is by actually seeking to understand, like giving them, but it's a messy process. I mean, it can be messy. And I think that's actually what is challenging, is that it requires more from us. Yeah. Because if we didn't learn how to do this, we don't know how to do it. It's really important that we learn how to do it so we can help our kids do it. Yeah. So I can see the fallout of those areas where I didn't know how to handle my anger responsibly. Like you said, with your anger, it was difficult to help my daughter to do that until I really worked on my own anger.
Yeah.
So good stuff. Yeah. You know, so much to think about, and to know.
I love what you said when you were talking about that they're pushing away and they're, but they don't know how to do it in a way that feels really good and is like really respectful and nice. And I really was just thinking of giving birth and how giving birth is such a messy, painful experience. It's not like this real easy entrance into the world. It's, I don't know what it's like for a baby being born, but I know what it's like to give birth. And I just think the whole thing is just, it's hard. It's a lot of intensity. So I think it's kind of the same thing, launching our kids into the world. It's not always a smooth, pretty, really feely good kind of experience. And for me, I have experienced sometimes that pushing away feels like rejection too. And that's something that I've had to remind myself over and over again. This is normal, it's a normal thing. And it doesn't feel good, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the closer your kid is with you, the more that they have to do that in order to leave. I noticed each one of my kids as they were getting ready to leave, like senior year, it seemed like it upped the ante. I don't know, like where they were just, maybe moodier, grumpier. And I do look back on that. And I think that was partially, they were scared about leaving, but they still felt like they were ready, but they had to push away from me. It just, I hear that a lot too.
I do too. And I experienced it. And I've heard so many moms say, almost like with some kids, almost by the time that time comes, everybody's like, yep, it's time for you to go to school, because it's like this, it's a necessary thing. We wouldn't want it any other way, because our kids are supposed to grow and mature and leave and find their way,
Yeah, I hope moms, as you listen, you're feeling encouraged that you're not alone in this, and that whole letting go process. It's kind of like shedding skin, or there's something about that transition, and just, I don't know. It's like, it is, like you said, rebirthing in a way, like going through that. It's a messy process.
Yeah.
So there's so much that we can talk about. And I feel like we've gone on and on. I did want you to just, in closing, share about the story, because I think this will encourage moms, because we were talking about letting go of control and the ways that we can get in the way. And you wrote a blog post for us about the letting go process and how it can be painful. And it was about the yellow cup, and it's actually in your book too. Can you share what happened with your daughter and what that was like for you, and that story?
Yeah, this kind of touches on the letting go, and then also just that whole idea that our kids will grow through their struggle. But Kate was 18, and it was her senior year. She called me at work and she was crying. And when I heard that, my heart just, sank, and I just, thinking what happened. And she had just gotten off the phone with the admissions counselor from the school that she was hoping to go to. She had been invited to apply for a merit-based full ride scholarship to this private school. It was really the only way that she could go to this college, is if she were to get this scholarship. And Bernie and I were just sure she was going to get it, because we know she's amazing. We thought for sure, that she would get it, but he called and said she didn't get it. And we had been there 3 weeks before for the interview, and we'd visited the town. It was so cute. And we'd kind of walked around, and she already had a lead on a job in the admissions office. And we were imagining what life would be like her being at the school. So this was really devastating. For her, it was so disappointing for us as parents. So I left work, I came home, and as soon as I walked in the door, I just went into full fix-it mode. Like I hated that she was going through this. And so I went to her sisters and said, Kate didn't get the scholarship, so just don't ask her anything about it, and just leave her alone, give her some space. I texted my sister, Carrie, and my best friend, Margie, and said, Kate didn't get the scholarship. Please pray for her and pray for me. And then I walked into the kitchen, and I saw this yellow mug on the counter. and she had bought this mug when we were on that trip in this little college town at a coffee shop, and she'd been drinking her morning tea out of it every day for 3 weeks. And when I saw it, I just thought, it's, I said to my husband, he was washing dishes, and I said, Bernie, quick, wash that mug and give it to me. I'll dry it and put it away in the cabinet behind all the other mugs. And so I did. And later, when I told my friend Margie that I, put the mug away, she kind of asked me, why did you move the mug? And I thought it was so obvious. I just said, well, because I knew it would be painful. I knew that I felt like it would be salt in her wounds,
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to unpack that, I started to see that it was really about my discomfort, because if you think about that situation, anybody in that situation coming in and seeing that mug, they might do a number of things. They might cry. They might take the mug and throw it up against the wall. They might throw it in the garbage. They might calmly go to the sink and wash it and dry it and put it away themselves. Like, there's a whole lot of things that they could do. But the point that I think she was trying to get me to realize was that could have been part of her process, of seeing the mug and thinking, oh, what do I want to do with this mug? Now, I'm not trying to beat myself up, because I'm a loving mother and I was just trying to do what I felt was helpful. But the other thing that caused problems there was that I reached out to my sister and to Margie and told them, and my sister immediately sent Caitlin a text and said, I'm so sorry, I'm praying for you, I love you. And the truth was that Kate didn't share with anybody for a couple of days what had happened. And I shared her news with people before she was even ready to share her news. So that was another thing that I did. Again, just trying to, and part of it was me needing support as a mom. That was something that we actually talked about with a counselor and kind of worked through my overstepping and my over involvement. But I realized, as we talked about that, at one point, Caitlin said to me, and you touched on this earlier, she said, do you really think so little of me that you thought I wouldn't be able to get through this? And when she asked me that question, I just thought, oh my gosh, like what felt like very loving actions for me to kind of insert myself into that picture and try to clean things up and make things a little bit easier, really was communicating a message to her that I don't think you can handle this. I don't think you can get through this. And I didn't believe that, but that's what the message that she was, that she was receiving. So it was just one of those things that we kind of worked through. And it's and I thought back to when the girls were babies, the pediatrician told me, they need tummy time. You need to put them on their tummy so they can build those abdominal muscles. And I would do it. And all 3 of my girls hated it. And they would cry as soon as I would put them on their tummy after just a few seconds. So I'd flip them back over because I didn't want to hear them cry. And all throughout their growing up years, it would happen if, they didn't make a team, or maybe one of their friends in their group was mean to them and I knew the mom, and I'd have to stop myself from sending a message to the mom or sending a message to the coach or a teacher, wanting to intervene to try to smooth things over or make a situation better, instead of seeing the value in them struggling and getting through something, realizing that they can get through it, that God can help them. And then again, like being that support person. I wish if I could go back and do it over, I wish I could have just said, what do you need from me? Is there anything I can do to help you right now? And let me know when you want to talk. Or would it be okay if I texted Margie and Carrie just to let them know so they can pray for you? Like just learning to be more respectful in that process.
Thank you for sharing that. Gosh, so many moms can relate. It's just such a good example of like you said, I'm the loving mom. It just didn't register
translate
what you were doing. But I love that you were open to hearing her feedback, and how wise. She gave you a gift to say that to you, and that you were able to take that in, even though that maybe was painful to hear. To listen to her feedback that, Mom, did you not think I could handle it? And being open and receptive to that. And then you're open to looking at, okay, how is this playing out? And something struck me I think it's so important for us to have a place we can go where we can talk about it when we want to jump in and rescue. That's what I love about like the inner circle that I have, where moms come, and I know you lead small groups with moms too, where you can like talk about it, call and say, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain because they didn't get accepted. And then if we can process what we're feeling, then we're less apt to react out of that place.
Exactly. Because sometimes it is more about my discomfort of seeing, like, I didn't want to watch that yellow mug scenario play out. I didn't want to watch her come in and then see what would happen. That was going to be really hard. So I just removed it, you know? And one of the things you had asked me was like, so what happened? Like, what's the end of the story with her? And, you know, if I were to just say, I could just say some facts and make it sound like everything just ended up the, you know, like we'll say, well, everything happens for a reason, you know. So she didn't go to that school because the truth was, even with the best scholarship they could give her, it was double what this other, her second choice was. And we really wanted them, our kids, to just, this is what we can afford. And we don't want you to have all these burdens of, you know, school loans. And I mean, you're already going to have some, but we didn't want it to be too much. So I could just say, well, she went to another school and she did great. She graduated in the top of her class and she got scholarships and came through and, you know, came out of college without any debt. And she met her husband there, and make it sound like, see, it was all perfect. But those things are true. But the reality is that she went to this school, a great school. She worked her butt off. She was an RA for 3 years. She worked at the admissions office, long hours, and earned as much money as she could. She had some really hard semesters. It was very challenging. She did meet her husband, and now they're starting their life together, but nothing was perfect. And there's still struggle, but I do feel like her second option ended up being great, but nothing was perfect. And I think that's another thing that I think this whole illusion of happily ever after, it's just never the way that it goes. You know, there's always going to be whatever path they take, whether they go to this school and have this experience, or this school and have this experience, they marry this person or they marry this person or whatever, there's always going to be challenges. But she grew a ton, and she learned so much through everything that she's gone through, and it's equipped her to face the next challenges that are in front of her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And what a good friend. Margie.
Yes, she's the
you
best.
having Margie. Because we need friends to say, don't do it.
Yeah, we need friends to say, why did you move the mug? Why did you do that? Why do you think you did that? You know, absolutely, to help us see things that we can't see.
Yeah, my daughter had some hard news to tell my husband, and I so badly wanted to tell him first, just so his reaction wouldn't be over the top.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would do that, but this was a situation where it would not have been the best, you know, would not have been the right choice. And I called somebody and I said, I want to let him know. And they were like, no, this is in between them. You need to let her tell him, not, you know, get out of the middle, you know? And so I was able to do that, but it was scary because I didn't know how he was going to respond. I thought that might be hard for their relationship if he's really mad.
That's us wanting to kind of control as much as we can. But that's so good that you went to a friend. And that was something that my daughter came to see, like when I texted Carrie and Margie, you know, it was like, it's a fine line there, because I said, I need these women to help me. It would have been even worse. I would have done more things, you know, Margie was there saying like, hold on a second, like there's a process here that she needs to go through, and you can't fix this for her. And so I think that Kate also was able to see, I depend on these women to help me, and they are for her and they love her, and all of it was okay. I don't think there's any bitterness or anything unresolved, because we worked through it, and we both learned a lot through that. So there's so much grace for all the times we don't get it exactly right.
Very much so. Especially if we're willing to say, hey, I would have done that differently.
Yes.
We're learning and growing right alongside our kids.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Oh,
much,
thank
Becky,
you.
for being here again with me, and we'll have you back again if you're willing to come back.
Yeah, I love getting to talk with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and tell them again where they can find you, get your book.
Yeah, so my website is just my full name, which I'm sure you'll have on the podcast, but it's BeckyBaudouin.com. And then the book is called Enjoy Every Minute and Other Ridiculous Things We Say to Moms. You can find it on my website, but it's on Amazon. It's at Walmart.com. So you can find the book in different places too.
Yeah, and it's wonderful, moms, because you have questions. So it's really a good book to do with a group.
It is. I have groups that are several groups that have done it together. The questions are right there at the end of the section. So you can do it yourself and kind of even just reflect on the questions. You could do it with a friend or with a group. That was my dream when I wrote it, was just that moms would be able to read it and then connect with each other and kind of have those friendships, kind of go through it together.
Yeah. It's good. Maybe next time you come back, we can talk about the marriage relationship and how you parent when you're not on the same page. That's been coming up a lot. And I know you have a chapter about that too.
I do. I have a big chapter on marriage. The myth there is kids come first. You can work on your marriage later. So just really, and you know what, I use all these myths as really just a structure and a way to talk about all of these things that are so important.
Yeah.
So,
oh gosh. Well, we'll have a good laugh with that because we've all said that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. All right, Becky. Well, thanks, and appreciate you so much and what you're doing out in the world.
Thank you.